Welcome to another episode of Addiction, Cancer, Recovery, and Me. Today we're going to talk about meat, eggs, and cancer. Sort of talking about the nutritional science versus the ethical considerations and why animal-based products are good, potentially helpful in cancer recovery. The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We are not medical professionals, although we have and will at times consult medical professionals. The content shared is based on our personal experience and research. This is Adrian's story from his perspective. Hello, Adrian. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
So I'd really love to get your thoughts today because you've had quite a journey through your cancer recovery and addiction recovery in transitioning more specifically in the last 5 years, I think it is, from a raw vegan diet, which you were on for the better part of 4 years, I think it was, 3.5, 4 years.
That would be about right, yeah.
Yeah. But in the last year to year and a half, transitioned away from a raw vegan diet to an animal-based diet. And
Correct, yeah.
with quite a conscientious shift for reasons we have touched upon in a previous episode, but would love to go into more in depth today. And so I'd love to talk about, from your perspective and your journey through that recovery, why animal-based foods are so controversial in cancer and health discussions. And I can address some of the technical aspects that I'd love it from your perspective, what benefited you. And then more specifically, can meat and eggs be part of a cancer-conscious diet? So how we could do that through sort of ethical sources or just, really good quality sources that make sure we're doing it in the right way. So first off, let me ask you, in terms of the nutritional benefits of meat and eggs, let's just start from the pure sort of facts. There are some very clear nutrients that meat and eggs give you that some vegetarian or plant-based foods do not give you. And so I think it's really important to kind of highlight that. For example, B12, heme-based iron, which is animal derived iron, creatine, taurine, DHA, EPA, and complete proteins. These are things that you can't get, to the best of my knowledge. I'm always open to being contradicted and learning, that you can't get from plant-based foods, but are quite essential to a good, complete, balanced diet. And again, I'd love to know from your perspective, were any of these considerations when you transitioned from raw vegan to meat, and how did you come to learn of these things?
Okay, well, as you say, we've covered a little bit of ground with regards to the transition between, why I came off the vegan diet, and that was the fiber-based thing. And it all came around through my consultation with someone high up within the Buddhist realms, again, which we've touched on. But so I was kind of arguably not so much forced into it, but led into it because of the issues I was having with, as far as I'm concerned, and this is only from my perspective, from my own learnings and how I felt, is that, through the blood work, etc., that too much fibre was causing an issue. And when I was told by someone that basically, and again, this was their perspective and through their own teachings, that, plants aren't necessarily required within our diet but used for medicinal purposes. Now, that's where I made that transition. I felt there was a necessity to do so. So I at that point, I'm not saying I completely cut out vegetables. I didn't. So I didn't go onto what were called a carnivore diet. Mm-hmm. But I actually, because of the ethical side of things, from my, again, perspective, use that word a bit, but it's prevalent. So I struggled with the thought of eating, another sentinel being. It just didn't sit comfortable with me. Now, I felt that fish was a little bit further, again, just the way that I see things, mm-hmm. a little bit further down the ladder, so to speak. So that's the route I took. But I, again, typical addict behaviour, I went all in, and I found myself having fish pretty much 3 times a day, and I did that over the course of about a year. And I believe that was an overload of omega-3. So, and I started to have, well, put it this way, there was a set of scans I had done showed that there was something on the liver, which still actually funny, it hasn't been, to be honest with you, hasn't been identified to this day. No one knows what it is. It's been there for a while
So
now.
it's just a lesion or something?
Yeah, it could well be a lesion.
Okay.
It's something on there, but I've put it down to arguably because I did change my diet. I tried to do the math, and I felt that I was like, for example, I have oily fish for breakfast, which we can explain the benefits of oily fish. Might have. If I had lunch, I'd have fish again for lunch, and then I'd have a tuna steak or swordfish or something for dinner.
So three servings.
Three servings of
Plus
fish per day.
In your supplements? Any omega-3 in your supplements?
To start with, that's right. There was actually. It's a good point. But that was algae-based, though. That wasn't fish-based. It was omega-3, but through algae. But, I mean...
It's still... That's fish feed off of, is the algae.
That's
why fish are really rich in it, because they feed off of the algae.
So I went straight to source.
Right.
I cut out the middleman.
Yeah, but it's still a high dosage per day of omega-3.
There you go, yeah.
Which can lead to fatty liver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, again, obsessive behaviour, typical addict behaviour. So
you went from having none of it for about 3.5 to 4 years to then all of a sudden having a quadruple dose of it per day.
Which is probably not advisable.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, it didn't do me any real harm, but there is.
But the fact that something showed up on your liver about a year later, then maybe let's dial it back a bit.
It makes sense.
Okay.
That, while
something to be concerned of.
Or something to strongly consider. So I thought, right, I'm going to knock this back.
Okay.
So, and what do I do to replace? I'm still under the guidance and under the wing of, the head of the order has suggested to me.
Okay.
That was important to me. So I wanted to go down that path. Now, bearing in mind, and this is an important thing to add here before I kind of digress, is that at this stage, as far as I'm concerned, I don't like to use the word cancer-free, but I'm in remission, and I'm what you would call non-disease evident.
Right.
So there is no cancer as far as I'm concerned. I've got scans next 2 weeks, so I don't want to tempt fate here. There we go. We'll do that.
So you're in remission, which for the purposes of the audience means you went from being riddled with tumors all over your body and your spleen and your liver and brain, etc., multiple, like dozens of tumors everywhere, to in the span of the last 5 years being tumor free.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just want to reframe that for the context of the audience who might not have followed us from the beginning, but that's what you mean when you say in remission.
In remission. So point being is the dynamics of where I was when I took the vegan diet into play was I was full of cancer.
Yeah.
So I was trying to fight the cancer.
Right.
Now I'm trying to keep
it at
cancer at bay. So it's a significant difference, and that is reflected in my diet now.
Okay. So you don't take extreme measures,
no,
like you did in the beginning of your journey. You're now kind of...
Well, I'm taking extreme measures, but that's just because of the way that I'm wired. Because I jump with both feet. But
I mean, you're not eliminating... you're not on the raw vegan diet anymore. Because now you're reintroducing some animal-based products, but within reason, and perhaps with a focus on very good quality.
Okay. And because of my training regime as well. Because
you need the protein.
I want the protein, and everything comes with it, the collagen, the other elements that you touched on earlier.
Okay.
So now I took that leap of faith, dare I say, and started to try the meat side of things. And cut long story short, I'm now following. I have steak and eggs pretty much every day because, again, with the eggs, the cholesterol thing, now I think this is something that really people need to do a lot of due diligence on, because of the Alzheimer's. I won't go into too much detail because I don't truly understand it.
Okay.
But there is a strong connection and a big following behind the learnings that by the changes that those recommendations with regards to cholesterol levels is now is incorrect. I'm not saying
Yes.
it is or isn't, but I'm saying that there's a
In
big...
terms of the cholesterol
getting
levels
it.
of
Yeah.
eggs,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. They
Well,
have changed. They used to say that too many eggs would increase your
That's right.
cholesterol levels, and now they actually say no, that it's good cholesterol anyways.
Yeah.
Even if it does, it's the good cholesterol
Yeah.
that you want, and so it can
But they
lower the
changed the
bad.
levels as well.
Yeah.
They changed the levels of cholesterol to what they see to be healthy.
Right.
They lowered it.
Right.
And there's a strong link with lack of cholesterol and Alzheimer's.
Okay. Yes.
So again, I'm just glazing over this because I don't know that. I don't want to talk out of time.
Sure.
I don't know the facts, but because obviously there's a lining of the brain which is called melanin or something along those lines.
Okay. Now you're testing me.
We'll educate
Yes.
the audience further
Yes.
for those that don't know
include it in
later
the
on.
comments.
But that's all cholesterol.
Yes. Okay.
So we need that healthy cholesterol.
Yeah.
So basically, I've gone on to a all meat and egg diet with, I have that for breakfast pretty much every day. So steak and eggs, and then of an evening I will have more of a balanced diet. So I'll still have the steak. That's the main source of my meal now is the red meat.
Okay.
Very rarely have chicken, every now and again. It's a ground feeder, so I'm not over keen on that. And turkeys I feel is better. And I have that probably maybe once a week. But predominantly steak, which will come. You can educate me and the rest of it on the benefits of, i.e., what the vitamins are.
I was going to say,
but it's mainly I did it, and I found the difference through my training is dramatic.
Okay.
I've doubled my strength. I've got far more energy. The collagen has made me a hell of a lot more. Balance has improved. My vision has improved, and my skin, everything has dramatically improved. So, again, from my perspective, I feel, well, if it's working, if I feel well, I look well, I'll find out next week how my bloods are doing. So I will obviously act on that.
Sure.
And and I will continue to do what I'm doing.
Okay.
But
in terms of the benefits, you've clearly seen that now that your cancer is in remission and you've eliminated the tumors, that actually going back onto a animal-based diet within reason, again, with some guardrails in place. So you focus on quality, organic, grass-fed sources.
Absolutely.
Is that important?
That's a very, very good point.
Grass-fed as opposed to grain-fed, for
absolutely.
example.
Yeah. No, and I not all of my food. I go directly to the butchers and to the farm shop for all my produce. I still clear of supermarkets,
knowing that those butchers and farm markets get it directly from the farm.
They do, and they're not pumped generally full of
organics. They're not pumped of chemicals and hormones.
There's hormones, etc., and everything else, antibiotics, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So certainly not at the level that you would do
in the supermarket.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's why I go to those sources, and as you rightly say, grass-fed, organic.
Yes.
And you do notice a difference. And it's not as expensive as people might think. You'll be surprised.
You know, that's a really great topic. I continuously have this conversation with people that go, oh, you buy from organic? Oh, isn't that expensive? And you must spend I said, actually, I buy less, because if you buy high quality food, which is therefore higher in nutritional value, you actually end up consuming less because your body is satisfied by the nutrition in that food.
Exactly.
So your body's not constantly I've learned, or this is, again, I'm open to being corrected, but if you are consuming good quality food, then your body actually craves less because it's received the satisfactory amount of nutrition it needs from the food you're eating, and therefore you have less cravings in general because it's not constantly going, I need more because I'm not satisfied. Yeah. So I found...
You're 100% right. And it does. I mean, like I do a broth soup. I mean, talk about contrast from going from completely plant-based to
bone broth or whatever is
exactly.
incredibly, incredible.
The collagen and everything else that's in there. But, you can have just a plain, clear soup, and that will fill you up for the rest of it. It's incredible because, again, just goes to show what processed foods do. Yeah. But anyhow, we won't go off track. But,
and it's a great point because, for example, I think most people won't know that grass-fed beef or meat is higher in omega-3, for example, and antioxidants, whereas grain-fed is often treated with hormones and antibiotics, which again, the antibiotics, that's a whole other conversation, but actually kind of destroy the gut and are deeply harmful and resistance, not to mention the resistance to other things and diseases in the future. And whereas grass-fed supports inflammation control and better nutrient profile. So these are just some of the benefits of grass-fed versus grain-fed beef, and that's just with beef. You can imagine with other sources of protein.
Exactly. Protein. And also it's said as well, someone educated on this on me the other day, is the animal's well-being.
Yes.
If an animal is, dare I say it, happy.
Yes.
If it's if it's out in the fields, it's in the open, it's getting the fresh air. I mean, where I go to, I don't, because I don't want to look at them. I'm being honest. I've got to say it as it is. They're in the field opposite to where the butcher's is. I mean, there's a scenario, but they live right on the coast, because where I live is not far from the coast. So they've got all that sea air there, and that translates into the meat.
Yeah.
They say that it's the argument that you are what you eat, but it's not. It's the stress as well, because obviously when animals are in those like battery hens or cows that are kept, and a lot of cattle are kept inside the whole of their life.
Yes.
There's the stress hormones that are released.
Yes.
Which again just add, then that goes into the meat, and then that hormone goes into your system.
Correct.
So again, it's being mindful of getting produce as the best that you can physically get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that's not going to be easy for most, but it's with the internet and everything else that we have
today,
it's a lot easier to find this stuff.
Yeah, and you don't need to eat it daily. You eat it daily because you have the access and perhaps the affordability or you see the value in it and it helps you. But we don't need to eat meat every single day, even if you ate it a few times a week. Good quality meat a few times a week or a couple of times a week is better than bad quality meat daily.
Or
no
exactly.
meat.
I mean, again, as you know, I think it's quite common knowledge during our discussions now that I don't touch processed food at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's across the board, whether it's processed vegan or processed meat or whatever that might be. It's all as far as I'm concerned, it's much of the same.
Yeah.
But so again, with the meat, so of an evening I have the broth, but I will put, as I touched on previously about the fibres within vegetables, I now, because of what I've learned along the way, that it's much easier on the gut, and also the microbes and whatnot that you have, the enzymes within fermented vegetables. So I put kimchi within my soup.
Yeah.
So it gives it more of a vinegary taste. If you like pickled food and things like that, it's fantastic. It's
delicious.
And it's so filling and nourishing.
Yes.
So that's so we're back on the subject of things being more balanced.
Yes.
So yes, I'm having the red meat and I am having the eggs.
You're not on a lion's diet. You're just on
a carnivore
diet.
Yeah, well, it's a carnivore.
You're carnivore because
you're in there, but
you're carnivore because you're eating meat. Yeah, but you're not on a lion's diet where it's only meat.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, it's about balance. But I have. It's fair to say that I've dramatically noticed the difference.
Yeah.
By converting to the meat as I have.
Right.
So
great.
So yeah.
Okay. So moving on now to sort of a bit about meat in the cancer debate, right? So it's interesting. I read a book last year in sort of preparation for this, a book that actually had come out in 2006, and I wish I'd read it when I first got it in 2006. But hindsight 2020, and also a lot has come out since this book. But it's called The China Study. A bit controversial because it really advocated for a plant-based diet, which I know you experienced and went through. And some of the key takeaways from this book is essentially that although the author of the book came from sort of, his father was I think a cattle farmer, was certainly a farmer of had animals on his farm and was very pro-protein, animal-based protein. He eventually spent 35 years of his career researching plant-based forms protein, and the original purpose for that you can read that in the book synopsis. But essentially the key takeaways from his 35 years of research, during which he did multiple concurrent studies at a time, so effectively doing almost 70 to 75 years of research over the course of his 35 years working, concluded that animal-based protein actually has the power to switch cancer on and off. And so, the limit was sort of set at if your diet consisted of 15% or more, around 20% of animal-based protein, cancer can be switched on. And if you had a diet of less than 5% animal-based protein, you can literally turn cancer off. That was essentially one of the main conclusions from this book. Quite controversial, particularly with the food industry, with the cattle industry, with lobbying groups in the US and the FDA. But one thing that I was really curious about in reading this book was, does that only count for processed meat? You know,
Yeah,
and
good shout.
you know, I, as we've talked about, really stress that I am a vegetarian, long-term vegetarian, but my partner eats meat, and I just say to him, look, at least if you're going to eat meat, eat organic, grass-fed, well-sourced meat. And so I wonder to what extent, you know, the quality of the meat plays into it. And it certainly sounds like there is an argument here. I mean, at least in the last year, knock on wood, year and a half that you've reintroduced meat, your cancer hasn't come back. So one would argue that there's an argument for organic, well, you know, good quality meat. And the, you know, and so I just kind of want to throw that out there from your perspective of what you've seen.
I think that's a good shout. But
because it's you know, the research is constantly evolving and changing, and I just want to flag that.
Absolutely. I think, you know, for me, what's important, as I said, my body's gone from a transition of having cancer and fighting cancer. So at that time, I was doing what I believe was the right way to get my system cancer-free. Now, my pure objective is to keep my system. I mean, I'm 54 years of age. Well, I will be in a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Keeping my system as fit and as healthy and as balanced as I possibly can. So that is a mixture of diet, exercise, and general well-being through my spiritual practice, and through the foods I eat, and through the supplements that I take, and through, as I say, and the exercise that I take. So, as I strongly believe that cancer cannot survive in an oxygenated system.
Right.
So my goal today is, today, is to keep that system ticking and as oiled, like an engine.
Right.
You know, as to use that as an analogy. You know, you start putting in the wrong oils or the wrong fuel into that car, you know, you're going to put unleaded into a diesel, what's it going to do?
Right.
So by keeping my system oxygenated, by putting good, you know, if I'm having meat, I'm putting grass-fed meat, the right stuff into my system. I'm having vegetables. From my perspective, I'll prefer to have the fermented, or if I'm having it, I'll have it 3 or 4 times a week. I'll have seaweed, for example, because it's full of antioxidants, and I have my supplements, which, as far as I'm concerned, balance the books with the mushroom compounds, to have a complete full range of everything that I feel is feeding my system.
Okay.
So it's all about balance.
Yeah, right. Okay. And just to come back quickly to the eggs, obviously they're, again, we're not talking about your sort of commercial eggs, but your, you know, high quality organic eggs.
Yep.
And there is quite a difference between cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, you know, what does that all really mean? And I don't expect you to take me through the technical differences here.
I'll try and keep it simple, but so basically, it's all a smokescreen. Unless it's pasture-raised, then they're basically, I would say they're not caged, because free-range would mean that they are let outside for about 10 minutes or so a day, and then they're back in. So it's something along those lines. If it's battery, then it's the most awful and horrendous thing. It should be banned, in my perspective, from my perspective, because they actually cut the beaks off the animals. They live in the size of a A4 sheet of paper. That's their space for the whole of their life.
Yeah.
But even, you know, we are, a blanket's pulled over our eyes, because, you know, you look at organics. You go into a supermarket, you see organic eggs. Organic just means that they're not battery. They're still kept enclosed, huddled all in together. They're not.
They might be fed organic grains, but they're not outside.
I'm just as guilty. I used to go in all the time. See, green on the packet. That's organic. I'm doing the right thing here, but I'm not. Pasture raised, which don't get me wrong. It's not the easiest to come across, because I live in the country and I'm quite blessed.
Yeah.
But if I want an egg, that's what I have.
Yes.
Because albeit I know I don't want to sound contradictory, because I do eat meat, and albeit and I'm an animal lover, But as a Buddhist, one thing I do want to eliminate is suffering.
Yeah.
And I know that the what I have,
Yeah.
the chickens the eggs that I have, I see them chickens every day, and they live the life of Riley. So they are very blessed.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of all of that.
Yeah, great. Well, and eggs are a nutritional powerhouse, right? So they have for each large egg, around 50 grams, contains 6 grams of high quality protein, 5 grams of healthy fats, including omega-3s, which we've mentioned are really important for the brain, and to about 70 to 80 calories. So they are really nutritional. And I would say that as you have focused rightly so on your nutrition and diet throughout this cancer journey, that is certainly something to consider introducing in a diet where you are trying to send cancer into remission or remain cancer-free. So you've talked about how consumers can make informed choices, so really look for that pasture-raised element. And in terms of how this relates to cancer, there's also an argument for eggs providing protein and nutrients that help tissue repair.
Yep, absolutely, yep.
Muscle preservation.
Yeah, 100% recovery as well, yeah.
Exactly, crucial in the recovery. And there's also, choline may reduce inflammation. The choline in the eggs may reduce inflammation and supports cognitive function, which I think is really important and something that we lose as we get older. So for cancer patients, eggs are an easy to digest protein source, especially when appetite is low. So I'm curious how you've kind of experienced that throughout your more recent, the sort of the last year's worth where you've introduced it. How have you found you said your cognition and your eyes have improved with the meat and introduction of meat and eggs.
Yeah.
Any other,
not to be fair, not just across the board, my health, in every area, just I feel probably the healthiest, ironically, than I've ever felt.
Your vitality
today. Yeah, vitality, energy levels, skin and hair. Condition, I feel 10 years younger.
Okay.
So
that's a good argument there.
Arguably,
that's a good sell.
I guess so. I guess you can look at it that way.
So I'll give a few key takeaways just to wrap up. We're doing a short episode here today for the purposes of time on our sake, but I think it's always great to share some key takeaways. And one is that meat and eggs provide key nutrients, but should be consumed with quality and balance in mind. Would you say?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Another is that sourcing and preparation impact the health risks associated with meat consumption. So you talked about organic sourcing, but making sure it's really grass-fed. And then there's also the ethical considerations, as you mentioned, as a Buddhist, trying to consider the suffering of the animals, but also then plays into how you are then impacted as a human. So making informed choices allows for greater balance in your diet as well as your approach to ethics. And I would just caution that some studies have linked excessive egg intake to certain cancers like prostate or colorectal cancer. So just be careful and remember everything is about balance at the end of the day. So don't do it to excess.
It's very difficult because there are sound arguments on both sides of the fence, and it's you have to find what works for you. That as I say, even on the meat side of things, there are those that are as healthy as can be that purely stick to the carnivore diet. All they will eat steak day in, day out, and it serves them incredibly well. Yeah. So, but this is all about my journey, and what has worked for me.
Yes.
And and I'm hoping that by sharing what I do, someone can at least take something out of that that's going to help them along the way.
Absolutely. Well, certainly going from being given 2 months to live to surviving and being cancer-free in remission 5 years later is a powerful testament to what you've been doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for sharing that.
You're more than welcome.
And I look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Addiction, Cancer, Recovery, and Meat. We look forward to having you back on the next episode, joining us for the next episode. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every little bit helps us spread the word and help and inspire others. Thank you so much.
Thank you.